Bam.
This is Michael Starr, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on. In a different life, maybe I became a war correspondent. I definitely have gone to war and seen a lot of things. I'm just background for you and I talking. I was a spy in Afghanistan, Iraq, Egypt, Germany, a bunch of places. And what you learn is that the ground truth, at least what I learned from what I did, the ground truth is Trump in every single case. If you get two levels up away from the ground, everything starts to get cloudy and personal narratives start to sneak in. So I appreciate what you do, how you do it, and just thanks for coming on the show and helping give us some insight on what is really happening in this wild, crazy war between Hamas and Israel.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
when you when you look at your job professionally, how okay, so here's the thing I've encountered with reporters who embed. They will come to tell their story, not the story, quite often. I'm not accusing you of this. I'm just saying that that is often what's there, and they have a job to do. They've got to do it in a certain amount of time. I understand all of that, but it's very, very tough to understand what truly is going on. I would say you can't do it by embedding for a couple of days. Like you've really, that might be the mission, but it's going to be hard to get things accurate.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm not a war correspondent.
Okay.
In the civilian life, I'm a journalist for the Jerusalem Post. I'm the diaspora affairs and Jewish world correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. Um, but as an Israeli civilian, as an Israeli citizen, I'm also a reservist in the Israeli military, and I keep these two worlds separate. I don't report while I'm in uniform, and while I'm out of uniform, I'm not engaged in any hostilities. I try to keep them separate as possible.
Right.
And that also extends when I usually don't do any reporting, even my civilian life, about the war itself. But what I wrote about was my personal experience as a reservist
Gotcha.
after the fact. So I wasn't doing any live reporting from the ground. And you're absolutely right that personal narratives can start to creep into the story once you get a few levels up the echelon. And there's the problem with war reporting, in which you go in, you embed for a few days, and then you're out. It's a
Yeah.
problem. But and also in experience, you're going to encounter problems with every experiential story. I can tell you what a certain place was like at a certain time with my company or battalion. But that might not extend to everybody's
Sure.
experience. I can extrapolate and speak to other units and get a good sense of what's going on in the broader field. But we're all always going to be limited by what we can experience, we can grab onto in information. That's why we should always try to pursue as multiple sources, as many as possible, to try to get a clearer picture. Problem comes in wars like this, when so much information warfare is going on.
Yeah, the information warfare part of this, the information operation, people tend to call that PSYOP, but PSYOP is the actual operation. The information operation part is creating a narrative out of these stories, these individual things that are designed to misinform, ill-inform, whatever it is. So I appreciate that. One of the challenges we have is because of the information operations space, and because and probably this has always been true, but I'll just say modern reporters seem desperate to compromise their integrity. It's hard to trust someone who is a diaspora reporter for anything that says Jerusalem in the title. How do we? How do you protect your bona fides? I already hear you saying I put a wall between service member and reporter, but how do you protect your integrity so that even if nobody believes you, you know that, hey, this is what happened, this is what I saw, and that's all there is.
Well, I consulted with a bunch of other soldiers who are also, have their criticisms, and both of the coverage that's been going on, and of the military's kind of approach to the situation there. And I tried to mix in, criticism, both of the military and, uh, you know, uh, praise for yes, the military and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and criticism for the kind of what other outlets are putting out there. So I made sure not to lean to one side or another too much, just focusing on what people are actually feeling, what people are actually saying, regardless if I think that something is going to impact the narrative in one way or another. I think that I just want to get the truth out there,
Right.
even if maybe the truth is beneficial to my position. But some people are always going to be critical. Some people are never going to be happy with what you say or how you say it. You're always going to have people who exist entirely on the internet within this alternate reality of information that is very distinct from what goes on the ground. So they just float in that miasma, and they're never going to be satisfied. So there's nothing you can really do on that.
Just in the last 24 hours, we had a breaking story that Israel had attacked one of the Hamas's hospitals. Now, look, we don't want anything bad to happen to anyone, especially civilians. Israel has done a pretty good job from what I've seen on avoiding civilian things. But the challenge is that ABC, CBS, AP have repeatedly gone to Hamas as a source for the violence, and especially if it's anybody with Hamas or Palestine Ministry of Health, they've had to retract these stories over and over again. So, assuming that this attack is what was reported yesterday, I'm still suspect of it, and I expect to see retractions because the Palestinians, the Hamas side of things, has not proven to be a reliable source. Because, well, look. How many times do they have to report the wrong thing and then we find out something different happened once the Israeli forces go and investigate? This is part of an information operation that is troubling to me. So I immediately read that story yesterday and said, retractions inbound, right? Because we know that whatever's come out of there has reliably been bad, and yet these news sites continue to report it. I don't know that helps us understand what's actually going on the ground.
I mean, you saw a bunch of retractions that had to be issued about these supposed massacres that occurred at the sites. I know as a journalist that you're constantly trying to look for sources. We can tell you what's happening on the ground in real time, and you're all scrambling to get the story first. All right, but I know that there are certain sources that maybe I've used in the past that I will never use again because I found them to be inaccurate. And it's just not worth the risk to your reputation to use that source again if you know that they're wrong. Why put yourself through the retraction? Maybe these large news organizations think, okay, well, no one reads the retractions anyways, so I can just put this out, and who cares? But there needs to be some consideration. I don't know if there is. If when you're taking a source, like in any source, you have to think, well, what is the benefit for this person? You're getting a leak from, I don't know, the White House. Who is this person leaking? Why are they leaking? What's the benefit? Same thing you would think would be here, but I don't know if that is coming into play.
Yeah, the attack here is killed 20 people. Let's see, different numbers, but we'll say it's 20 for right now. And several of them were journalists who were at the hospital when it got hit. And so that comes across as being awful. And then the IDF says what they're supposed to say, because they're an organization like, this is awful. We'll look into it and we'll follow up when we've completed our investigation, which they always do. And what we're going to find out is more of the full story. Yet, like you said, the retraction won't matter when they come back and do it. If I don't know why, but folks are struggling to see that the sourcing has proven problematic repeatedly for all of these major organizations. And I don't know, it troubles me when we get so impassioned about something when clearly there's something else afoot. Did the Israelis do wrong yesterday when that attack? Maybe, we're going to have to wait and find out. But what I do know is that the news agencies are desperate to tell this story as often as they can because that's what they've done.
Yeah, there's a problem also with news consumption where people just take the news or whatever information is being delivered as fact. They don't really consider, okay, what's the source of that information even within the article. They kind of read past it. It's almost invisible. And to a certain extent, with there's always mistakes in warfare. Like in any human endeavor, there's mistakes, but we seem to be rediscovering a lot of basic things about warfare during this war, and pretending that there have been standards that have been already established, and we don't understand these things, like the concept of friendly fire or munitions going awry. I was born in Canada. Canada had troops in Afghanistan, and there was a horrific incident in which American Air Force accidentally bombed Canadian troops. And this didn't come as like a surprise to people, because there was an investigation into it, but there was a general understanding that these things can happen in warfare. But somehow with this particular war, we pretend that we were not aware of that concept, and we ascribe intention to every outcome.
Yeah. Boy, that description of things, when I'm looking at the CBS news piece now, and you can see the loaded language in this. And we'll not stick on this topic for too much longer, but they talk about how Israel has a history now of repeatedly attacking hospitals. Okay, not untrue, but also not the full story. And how many stories have they haven't been responsible themselves, which we've retracted 5 different times from the same source. Like, they're not being honest about this. So it seems like Israel is purposefully attacking hospitals, when we know that Hamas has woven their military machine into the civil populace, and to include the hospital. So we have this, even if they're reporting accurately and truthfully, they're spinning in a way that, again, like what we've just been discussing, this creates a lot of problems in terms of what is real and what's not real.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of soldiers were kind of frustrated with these two different realities that were being created by that type of reporting.
Yeah. One of the things that, look, everybody wants to put a big load on soldiers, but if you're in the conflict zone and there's people running towards you, you feel awful small and insignificant. And if someone's throwing rocks, you're supposed to withstand rocks being thrown at you. Even if you have body armor on, rocks are still rocks. Hunks of concrete is still concrete. We put a lot on people to withhold their response that would be justified. And legitimately, you have to try to balance the chaos around you by not creating more chaos, right? And so you take a brick that smashes your foot and injures you, or whatever it is. That's a big ask on people. That's any kind of soldier, and these people are young. To withhold their anger, to withhold their natural right of self-defense. It's a big ask.
It's a balancing act that a lot of soldiers have had to engage in every second of every day that they've been tasked with securing the perimeter around the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites. I don't think a lot of people know what it's like to have thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people barreling down towards you. Yeah. There's a lot of security considerations at play here. First of all, that there are terrorists within these civilian groups. We know that for a fact. We detain people, and one was attached to one of the commando units of Hamas. He was just in civilian attire. 2 were engaged in looting in October 7th. They crossed into Israel. And there had been terrorist attacks, thankfully not on the site that we guarded, but on other sites. A grenade was thrown, injuring people. An American security worker was stabbed, and Palestinian aid workers working with the JHF were gunned down. So it's not that it's just a concept that they're terrorists interspaced between these civilians. We know they're there, and if you get close if you allow them to get close, if you allow them to infiltrate your base or one of your forward strong posts, or even the aid site, it can mean the death of someone, because you don't know if they have a knife, you don't know if they have the grenade, and if you don't act, then someone could die. And besides this, there's also concern if this aid site gets overrun, that's it. That's it for the aid. Like it gets disrupted completely.
Right.
Profiteers, hoarders get to it first. They take it all, and then the next day there's no aid for the people who are coming on the time that they're supposed to come. And the aid drivers, don't want to come there. The workers don't want to be there, and the whole project collapsed. And there were times that it got overrun, and that's what happened.
Yeah. What's your guys's? It's one thing to say, hey, there's rules of engagement, but look, again, I know like one commanders can say the exact same words, but you have to decide like what is the risk that I'm allowed to take here. So the rules of engagement. How much confidence do you? I'm talking to the soldier right now. Like, how much confidence do you have that if you have to make a life and death decision, that you'll be backed up by your command? Because I've sat in the room with the commanders rubbing his head going, what do I do with this? Do I ruin this person's life, or do I allow him to have committed this murder that's questionable? Like I watched that conversation happen, and then the commander in this case said, I'm going to allow the death. I'm going to allow that to happen, but don't bring me one more of these things, right? And that changes the entire nature of how that unit is going to encounter things, because when their leadership tells them, don't kill anybody, the boss is fed up. Well, the rules of engagement have been interpreted in a different way. And that's really, really tough when you're 18 and there's someone barreling towards you, whether it's in a car or to get food or whatever it is, and you fear for your life. Because I don't know how it works in your guys' force, but I imagine it's the same as the U.S. force. If you are protecting yourself or somebody else, you get to use lethal force in these kind of places.
I know as a reservist, I have complete confidence in my platoon officer, my company officer. They're my friends, so I wouldn't ever believe that they would not have my back. I've been a reservist in that company for 14 years. We just served 3 tours together. I don't have any doubt that they're going to have my back, as long as I didn't do anything egregious and against the law.
Right.
And obviously it's within reason.
Right.
But I'm confident that with all the shenanigans that can occur with people once they become officers and start looking down at the grunt on the ground, I think I would be protected against that. And we're talking about the distance of higher brass from the ground before, and their approach to what's happening. A lot of soldiers are upset with the tools that they've been given to solve kind of the crowd control situations, the infiltrator situations, and this was the warning shots, which is an imperfect tool at best.
Right.
And a video went around of warning shots that were perhaps too close to the people that they were trying to scare off, and all of a sudden, like the brass kind of realized, oh, this is what we're asking soldiers to do. Well, you didn't realize what you were asking us to do beforehand, and they decided, okay, no more warning shots. So we couldn't do anything to control the crowd. And as soon as we stopped, the aid site got overrun several times, and another aid site, someone got stabbed. So that kind of demonstrates that disconnect pretty well. But when it comes to rules of engagement, at the battalion level, at the company level, platoon level, the orders were the same. We're not there to kill people.
Right.
That's counterproductive to the mission, but we'll defend ourselves if we need to. But it was emphasized again and again, we're not there to kill people. Our main tool was warning shots. I never had to escalate beyond warning shots. I know where all my bullets fell. I never shot if I thought it would endanger a civilian. The mistakes were made in other units. I know within our company, I know not many, but it unfortunately happens with a tool like this.
Yeah.
Very rarely, it would if people would ignore the warning shots and continue on a trajectory that was threatening, it would escalate to shooting at the person's legs. And if they're already within like a dangerous range, presented a threat, then there was a lethal force. But I only know of one instance during our month and a half guarding the perimeter in which something escalated to lethal force, and I only heard about it. I didn't see it happen. It was some guy with a machete ignored our warning shots and went into our semi-occupied like strong point, where who knows what they were going to be doing there.
Yeah. You're illustrating a really powerful point that people have to understand is, again, you guys are looking at however many 1,000 people, 500 people, 100. If it's more people than you guys got, it's tough. And yes, you have weapons, but it's not as simple as folks want to make it out to be. I know from my time being deployed, a common rule of engagement matrix was shout, show, shove, and then shoot, shoot, shoot. And so each of these things was an escalation level. Shout and show was like, hey, back up, I've got a gun, and then if you were physically close, you could shove them back, right? You could, because that would be assault in the real world, right? But I'm going to shove you back to say, hey, stop, and get you to please, but it's an escalation. And then there was the shoot. The first shoot was a warning shot, and then shoot to disable the legs, the engine block, whatever it is, and then the game changer, just shoot to kill. And so that's now, so anybody listening, you can short circuit that. Oh my God, here they come. I don't have time to start shouting. I'm shooting to kill now, because you've assessed the risk as being lethal and you get to act in that way. And that's a very common thing across all of the Western services. So I want to say that to give folks a realization of what this looks like. So now you're on the ground in real life. And I don't know, how much training did you guys get specifically on warning shots? Did you guys do simulated aid station distribution practices? Did you guys get a time to do any of that stuff, or was this all like you're going to figure this out on the ground?
Figure this out on the ground. This is one of the huge, big complaints of the soldiers. Mm-hmm. We haven't had riot training in years, let alone right before this deployment. We were tasked with destroying Hamas infrastructure, tunnel infrastructure. During this, and in the middle of the tour, we got transferred to guarding the perimeter site. So the soldiers are really unhappy because that they've been moved to this task. I understand the army had this objective that decided, okay, alleviating the humanitarian situation and undermining Hamas governance. These are two big objectives during Gideon's Chariot. Is what we wanted to do. I understand that you redeploy forces, but there should have been some sort of training, and they should have provided us some other alternative besides warning shots. Now the problem is, okay, a lot of alternatives to warning shots in a battlefield are problematic. But even so, it's creative military. They should have tried to plan ahead, but I seem somewhat allergic to that concept.
And to the command's defense, we can't plan ahead for everything either, though, right? There are so many variables, and the enemy is supposed to expose our weaknesses. So when you talk about someone approaching your guys' line, you don't know how dangerous they are. They can swear up and down, put their hands up and be like, hey, I'm not dangerous. And then kaboom, they blow up or whatever. Maybe it's command detonated. Maybe it's remote detonated. We just don't know. And we're asking, again, the youngest people, the least experienced people to manage this thing on the ground. And you can't train for it enough. You can't prep. Here's the thing, and I know you'll appreciate this, is I would ask all of my special operations friends, have you fired more rounds in combat or had conversations, right? Because the way the U.S. fights, we have a lot of conversations, and they're like, oh yeah, it's conversations easy, way more than rounds. I'm like, okay, how much dedicated training have you had, professional training in working with an interpreter? Oh, none at all. And so we have these conundrums where, like, of course, we're going to talk to people all the time. We're going to try to build governance. We're going to do all these things that the U.S. and Canada, well, we all try to do, but we're not going to take it seriously, right? Because there's just not enough time because we have to train on lethality. I'm going to shut up here in a second. I just want to make another point. If you're going to deploy artillery guys, right? These folks are proud. They work hard. King of battle, right? And they're going to deploy and they're not going to shoot rounds at downrange at all. But what do pre-deployment? They shoot rounds because that's their job, is to shoot big rounds out of big guns. Then they get there and they go sit down and have chai as their daily mission. That is not a sustainable practice for success.
No, obviously you can't plan for everything, like you said, but when no battle plan survives contact with the enemy,
Right.
and the enemy more often than not is reality itself, is just the friction of reality, and it's the job of the military to adapt as best it can, and as those changes to plans
Right.
rise. So as I was leaving, things were starting to improve with certain things, but I do think the situation might be strategic more than tactical.
Was it uncommon for you or units you heard of for the IDF to put you guys in greater harm to protect the civil populace? Like there's the classic picture of a U.S. soldier standing in front of a woman and her child, as he's in a gun because he's trying to put his body between them and the gunfight. Were you guys asked to do that, to extend your well-being out while you try to save innocent lives?
I mean, being put in a situation where we need to kind of stand between tens of thousands of people, and not many. Weren't many of us, and it's just so they could get aid.
Yeah.
That itself is a huge risk that we've put to little benefit to ourselves.
Yeah.
Also, we haven't had too many interactions until now with the civilian population because the army is really focused on evacuating people, so we don't have to be put in that situation. First tour, our only interaction was when civilians, a father and a daughter, came in the middle of the night to our position, and thankfully, like, a fire was withheld, and we just gave them like water and food and sent them on their way. And then in the second tour, like we opened up these humanitarian channels, which went right by our base, which again, that opens, we opened up our security perimeter, and that opened us up to risk. So it's a varying risk, but thankfully nothing that was too extreme.
Right. Commanders are also there. They're one of their main goals is force protection. And so if you're going to create a stripe of red zone right through your perimeter to move civilians, that's high risk. And if that goes south, someone's answering for that if there's IDF soldiers killed. So all of these things, they're all extremely hard. When you work the aid side of this, were you guys getting better at it?
We had to try a lot of things along the way. I think we got better at it, obviously, and obviously the Gaz Humanitarian Foundation got better at it. They had a steep learning curve. Mm-hmm. We had to try a whole bunch of things to, just at the tactical level, squad level, just conducting warning shots that would scare people off, right. Also not hit them. But also not be so far that no one pays attention to them at all. Learning how to do things like using little quadcopters to try to scare people off and to direct them where to go so that they don't encounter other forces. We tried using flags and loudspeakers to try to also to motivate people to either come or to leave. To varying effects. Unfortunately, with the flag, it didn't work so well. Eventually, we built a barrier, a clearer barrier. There are always boundaries for where they could cross or not cross. We created even clearer barriers so that they would understand even more so where they couldn't cross. So we got better at communication with the civilian population. Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, they started to kind of understand the needs of the populace as time went on. For example, women just weren't, because they couldn't compete in the scrum for aid, so they started having like women only distribution times, also for hygiene products. I didn't see it, but I understand they also started a distribution for kids. They also, I think, understood that the congestion of so many people at once perhaps could be dealt with by multiple distributions in a day, and that would prevent also internal clashes between the Palestinians as well.
Yeah, boy. And one of the things from a few weeks ago is the enemy always gets a say, and so they were saying that the distribution was an intel operation. And I would say to that, of course, if we have local populace there, dudes like me need to be standing there trying to figure out what's going on, of course. But they would be trying to coerce the Palestinians to not accept the food or and threaten them. And that's just the act of doing that. One of the things about conflict that people don't realize is the tall flower gets you cut off. So if you're seen there, it puts you on the front. Even if you're just trying to feed your family, it's a risk. And when they add the risk of saying it's an intel operation and you talk to any IDF soldier, yeah, that's going to be risky for everybody. And it makes it harder to reliably get the aid to the people that need it the most.
There were definitely threats. One thing about people who ignored those threats and came to the aid site that was surprising was kind of the appreciation that was expressed to IDF soldiers as they were leaving with the aid. I don't know if it was a genuine gesture. I don't know if it was kind of like a white flag, like, "Hey, I'm nice, don't shoot me." But people were waving, blowing kisses, doing like heart signs, so some people, I guess, felt comfortable enough despite the Hamas threats. But the big issue was infiltrators. That was where 99% of the warning shots went. And sometimes we would detain these people if we would get close enough, or they would get close enough. There were some kids who came in these early hours, tried to sneak into the aid site, and they related that, well, they had to come early because if they didn't, by the time they would be leaving the aid site, and men who were waiting on the edges of town would come and take the aid from them. They would steal it from them. Now, I don't know if these were just criminal elements just trying to be opportunistic, or this is Hamas operatives who were taking the aid, but that was a reality for them. But besides the terrorists that we detained, actual terrorists, there are people who knew about, who had some affiliations to an extent that they knew where buildings were booby-trapped, where tunnels were, who's an operative, who's not an operative. Vital information was gleaned that saved a lot of people's lives.
Is there a way out of this mess that you guys can see from your point of view?
It's hard to see it when you're eating sand. When you're lying on the sandy ground, it's hard to banging your knees on concrete blocks that have been blown off of buildings. It's hard to see it. But I do know that something different needs to happen. This is the 18th war between Israel and Hamas or Gazan terrorist organizations in the last 2 decades. In 2008, we had the Operation Cast Lead, and 2012 there was Pillars of Defense. 2014 was Protective Edge. 2021, you had Guardians of the Wall, which is with Islamic Jihad, and now we have this. If we don't rout out the terrorist organizations, try to establish some sort of new governance structure, engage in a very deep-rooted de-radicalization program, like what was done with Nazi Germany post-World War II and Imperial Japan, then we're just going to be we're going to be going to war again. We don't want to have another October 7th. That's why a lot of the reservists keep on coming back. And we also don't want to go to war with Palestinians anymore. We Gaza was, despite all the propaganda, it was a beautiful place. There's a lot of opportunity there. And unfortunately, Hamas sacrificed it all for violence. They weaponized the entire strip it turned into a gun, and they didn't care who they shot with it, who they hit with it.
Yeah. They fed Palestinians into that machine, and that's the horrible part of it, right? You made a great point here in that there are so many little mini wars that we don't here in the West keep track of. We don't see that, they started this, and on and on and on. We lose track of that and think that it's just like this cold conflict, but in fact it's quite often hot, and there doesn't seem to be any negotiating that is going to solve this thing, at least not leading up to it. The other thing I would ask is, when this started, I was hoping that we would maybe see like a final blow dealt from the IDF to Hamas, and we'll see if that happens or not. But like all these desires for ceasefire, I don't know another country that would accept a ceasefire. This needs to be unconditional surrender from Pete's point of view. If Hamas surrendered unconditionally, the violence would stop immediately, and then we would figure out what to do next. Instead of being an erasure of Israel from the map, it appears possible that there will never again be a Palestine, because they've pushed this thing past the point of anybody credibly. I mean, it's just they're not a believable group of people. I'm not saying Palestinians, but I'm saying the terrorist side of things. They have one end, and that's the only thing they want to negotiate is the end of Israel. I'm afraid that we're not going to have a Palestinian state, and it'll be something else, and it won't be as good as it was 3 years ago, because some folks just can't abide any kind of solution that is peaceful.
Right. I hope that we can do whatever ends we reach. We can reach the point that a Palestinian state can be established there. I still have hope that it can happen. Mm-hmm. But like you said, people seem to think that, well, if you just have a ceasefire, that's an end in of itself. That's enough. Just stop fighting without addressing any of the situation. So that type of thinking, not actually addressing the solution, not actually addressing the underlying problem that led to all these consecutive wars, that's just going to lead to more fighting. Ironically enough, the push for ceasefire leads to more war often than not. And unfortunately, a lot of people are just calling for a ceasefire. You never hear people say peace now. They say ceasefire now. Yeah. But it's that mentality that if we had solved it in 2008, if we had solved it in 2012, if we had just gone in and done what we needed to do, the threat wouldn't have grown to such an extent that it would have required so much destruction to address the problem. We didn't. There was gangrenous finger, and because you didn't want to go through the pain of cutting off that finger, then it gets spread to the entire hand. And you didn't want to cut off the hand and spread to the entire arm. And now you're screwed. So the kind of suicidal empathy that some people have expressed is actually counterproductive to everyone that's involved in this conflict. And if a lot of people they want to either win wars or reach peace, but they don't want to actually fight the war or do the hard work that's required to negotiate a peace. There's no easy solutions. There's no quick solutions here. People are going to have to, unfortunately, suffer and buckle down and lock in and do the work if we want to get to the point where there is going to be a Palestinian state.
Yeah, I mean, it's a competition of wills right now, right? And the ceasefire gives the guy who's losing a little bit of a break, and doesn't compel them to behave. Because even if they make a deal, you can't trust that they're going to honor it, because they're terrorists, and for whatever reason, we're negotiating like they're a state, and it doesn't make any sense to me. When you look at everything that the IDF has done in general, can you give it a grade? Like, how have you guys done to be an honorable force that's fighting a lethal battle, a very complex fight for any country? But how have you guys performed?
I think we'll say a B plus. I think there could have been more things that we could have done. I think that we were restricted in a lot of ways, and that prevented us from doing better. Right at the beginning, there's certain decisions I'm not sure why we didn't make them, and I suspect we didn't make them because we thought we were still operating according to the ceasefire now rules, where people are going to stop us from fighting after a month. And so certain decisions were made and certain preparations were not made because of that kind of mindset. So perhaps if we had known that the war was going to go on for so long, we would have made better preparations for humanitarian efforts. I don't know why we didn't invade Rafah as the first thing in the war. If we knew that was going to be an extended war, why not cut off the supply of arms and potential escape routes for Hamas operatives to Egypt already at the beginning of war? Already still a few months into the war, these smuggling tunnels were, as far as I can tell, were still being operational. So I don't know why that didn't happen first. I think that it was a mistake, to kind of put a pause on certain aid activities earlier in the year to kind of so that they could implement the GHF. I think that overlap didn't work out as well as they thought it was going to work. I think the learning curve was a lot steeper than they expected, and I think that it didn't do well on the propaganda level, but people probably suffered because of a delay in aid distribution. So if they've gotten rid of that overlap, I think that gap in overlap between the GHF and other aid programs, then things would have been a little bit better. Yeah. I think that there probably should have been more training, obviously, when it came to aid distribution with the soldiers. We should have had riot control training, crowd control training, whatever you want to call it. There's probably a bunch of other things that I could think of.
Yeah. But there's always room for improvement, right? A B plus is pretty good. You guys accomplished a lot of your tactical objectives. It's just these strategic things that are always a devil, because it's hard to tactically advance them. One of the things that's interesting with all of our big conflicts, Ukraine, Russia, IDF versus Hamas, it appears that, including us here in the United States, that any of the people in charge of these things, if they held a fair election, all of the primary leaders would lose. I don't think Zelensky can win an election. It seems like, at least in the Western side over here, that Netanyahu wouldn't win another election. So what are your thoughts on Netanyahu? One of the conundrums with this is when we hear criticism of Netanyahu here in the U.S., it's how much of this is political in terms of internal to Israel? How much of this is political in terms of the U.S.'s left disliking Netanyahu? Netanyahu's been the primary prime minister the last 30 years, and so he's doing something to continue to get elected. I guess the question is how much of a problem is Netanyahu? Is what we hear about corruption and all these other things that are out there, is that accurate, or is that more information operation? Is that more political machinations?
Well, I don't think that there's a lot of things that Netanyahu, that other politicians would do differently that Netanyahu is doing right now in regards to the war. Maybe some would be more risk averse or less risk averse, but there's a consensus across the board that Hamas needs to be addressed, that October 7th can't happen again, then we need to get the hostages back. There's just different varying levels of priorities. There's not vast policy departures that you would experience if Benny Gantz would be elected or Naftali Bennett would be elected. The left's kind of disagreement with Netanyahu on the basis that he's extreme or something like that. It's mostly based off of the minor people that he's brought into his coalition, so he can keep his coalition going. How much power do these more right-wing people have actually over the war or over the government? It's debatable because the government system, what people don't understand the government system in Israel is that you can have people from other parties being awarded ministerial positions as kind of a reward for forming a coalition with you. So someone who is a very minor party can be minister of finance because they gave you the one extra seat to get over the threshold.
Yeah.
When it comes to is he maintaining the war, keeping the war going on so that he can stay in power? I think a lot of people don't want elections to a certain extent because they just want to focus on getting the war done. Across the board, a lot of soldiers right now are just sick of politicians across the political spectrum. As far as a lot of people are concerned, everyone, 120 members of Knesset should go home because they were in charge when October 7th happened. Eventually, that's going to catch up with Netanyahu. He's going to have to pay that consequence for being the helm of the ship when it ran aground. No. But there is a problem that needs to be addressed, and it's better to have strong leadership than to devolve into political squabbles. There are elements there that are entertaining elections, but so far there hasn't been a real serious push for elections, and most of the opposition are often looking for unity governments, either so that they can get a hostage deal done or to push certain priorities that they think are important for the war effort.
Yeah. And that's complex. You're talking about a lot of different things. And yeah, for those of us that aren't familiar, when you have a parliamentary government, you've got to form a government. It's not just given to you. You've got to go out and say, hey, this is how I want to run this thing. And yeah, so some of your adversaries can get some pretty sweet gigs. It's hard. And part of that ability to stay in power is, maybe pushing off hard decisions like let's go aggressively after Hamas, when they're bedded down, and planning something that we don't know about. It's this just Pete talking spy stuff here, but when we look at like a failure in the intel community, understand that for a lot of us, we're like, hey, we saw this threat coming a long time ago, but nobody wanted to deal with it, because that's a legitimate concern for a politician, is to say, we'll wait for that horrible day. Not that they want it to happen, but the cost of taking it on is terrifying. I mean, and you don't know that it'll cause a positive outcome. So even if you do detect on October 7th, what's the cost of preventing it? Wow. I don't know. I don't want to be responsible for that. So I don't want these bad things to happen, but it's all bad things when you got to break out the axe and chop that gangrenous thumb off, and everybody's like, are you fucking crazy? Let's try some antibiotics first, And so we lose, and this isn't to be contrary to you. It's just to illustrate these things are not done in a vacuum. And when you talk about handing out aid, it is not, and this is going to surprise people, it's not an orderly line. In general, Arabs don't do orderly lines. They come and they want the stuff.
I did not see many lines. I did not see any orderly queuing.
And yes, they're hungry, so every person will take more than their share if they can get it, and it will be a frenzy, and it's terrifying to be involved in these frenzies. It's very rare to see that kind of order. So what we picture and what reality is, these things are nothing alike, and that's why I appreciate you coming on and talking about what the aid thing is like, because we just don't understand. This is war. It's not gentle. There's nothing gentle or safe about war. It will kill anybody at any time. The war god does not abide anyone or anything. It just kills people. It might kill you in 20 years, but it's going to get you. And that's the thing about it. Even handing out a sandwich can be a lethal activity in a war zone.
Yeah, it's war. War is the province of chaos, and it's suffering and devastation. That's why you need to be avoid it at all costs. But if you do have to engage in it, if you do have to fight it, you need to fight to win.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the opening of that Pandora's box has been for naught, and you're just setting the stage for it to be opened again.
Yeah, and Sherman's been gone a long time here, U.S. American General Sherman, but he proves to be right every time. He's like, bring more people, kill more of them, destroy things, get it over with fast. It's going to be horrible. Just do it now. Chop that thumb off. And we're desperate to not abide what Sherman has said, but he's more right than we want him to be. And unfortunately, that means a lot of death and destruction, starvation, all those things, rape, all these things are going to happen. The longer this thing draws out, it doesn't get better. It doesn't get better forestalling whatever the end is going to be.
Yeah, and a lot of these ceasefires, pushes for ceasefires, a lot of the international pressure, all these protests, that the end result is prolonging things. It is delaying things. It is making Hamas believe that they can hold out and try to get a better hostage deal and not submitting to demands of Witkoff or Trump. They think they can hold out, and so everything just gets more prolonged. And as it gets prolonged, food insecurity goes worse, or internal strife occurs more within the Palestinian population. So in the end, they're ironically just creating more suffering for the Palestinians, which is something personally I would like to avoid.
Yeah. I think that's the common theme among Israelis, is that we don't want to have to fight the Palestinians, but here we are fighting them. And if we're going to fight, we're going to fight hard. What I know I invited you to come on the show to talk about all this stuff. Did we miss anything that you want to get off your chest, or anything that you find interesting about all this conflict? I appreciate you answering all my zany questions and scenarios. It's not easy to do, but you've done a great job in helping us all to understand a little more about what we're talking about.
Oh, I make it up as I go along.
Oh, good, me too.
I guess the another thing that people don't understand about warfare and food is that food insecurity is a standard situation for most conflicts. And you'd be hard pressed to find a situation that there isn't food insecurity. So I didn't see mass starvation in Gaza. I didn't see anyone emaciated. I didn't see anyone skeletal. But that doesn't mean that people don't have bad nutrition, or their days where they're not eating well, or they're not suffering in other ways. So people should have compassion for them, but not exaggerate things. Both sides of the spectrum don't help the situation, and don't help us get to a solution that creates food security. One thing that always happens in warfare when there is food insecurity is there's war profiteers and hoarding, and we saw a lot of the people who would be infiltrating were coming because they want to get to the aid site first, so they could get the best products, so that they could profit off of them. They could trade or sell them. And we know this because we saw trades happening right in front of the aid site. Some days they even opened a shuk, a bazaar with carts in which they were trading and selling the aid that they had just gotten from the aid site, which was bizarre to see. So I think that a lot of people, this is one of those things that people have seemed to need to relearn about warfare about conflicts and pretend that this is just an issue that's occurred in this war and no other, is that food insecurity exists in war. So I think that I don't know if it's some people just they just assume that the store down the street is going to be fully stocked. If war comes to them, and they think that everything stays the same besides all the things that they do think about. But this is the reality of war, and you should be pushing to find a solution rather than to just end the suffering of your own sentimentality.
Yeah. One of the this for folks, I'm sure you're aware of this, but one of the things that we do when we go to conflict zones is our people look at the normalcy factors. Bananas are an indicator. Do they have access to bananas? No. Oh shit, we have more problems than we realize, and it helps us kind of see what the condition is of the civil populace. I'm saying bananas, but it's stuff that's just hard to get. And you're right, because the grocery store doesn't stay open. It is all compromised. There's gray market everywhere. And it makes it's a conundrum for a commander to solve, because they can't know enough about that situation fast enough to do anything reliably good about it. It just always ends up, wars are destabilizing. And so all these things that would be normal become unnormal and destabilized, which causes it makes stability a very precious thing. It's something we should all preserve. I'm going to shut up now. But anything you want to say in closing before we go? And thanks, man, for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's great to get ground truth from someone. So thank you.
No, I think we covered everything. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I had fun talking with you.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Okay, hang on there.
Even if the topic wasn't that fun.
Yeah. Well, next time we'll talk about, I don't know, something good. But yeah, thanks for coming on. Please come back. Everybody else, I'll see you in a little bit. Thank you all. I'll come back and say goodbye to you in a second, Michael. Hold on. If I can. There it goes.